Welcome to another episode of 50 Shades and Grey. So today we are going to look at why is it so difficult meeting and finding relationships when you're older. So I think firstly, we need to look at why is it so easy then meeting people when we're younger. I guess a lot of that is to do with the pool of people that you're meeting with younger. It's a lot wider. There's less people married when we're younger. There's more availability of the opposite sex or same sex, whatever, your persuasion. And it's where our expectations, I think, are a lot less. We're still finding out about what people we like, what people we don't like, what characteristics we like, what sort of looks we like, what sort of personality traits we like. So we're discovering all of those, and they might be a succession of really small micro relationships that eventually lead us into later sort of 20s, maybe early 30s, into finding someone that we then start a longer relationship with. And because of the way that I think that things are set up, we kind of then naturally think, oh, well, like with the next stage is we get a house or we have kids together, or we get married and then have kids. And then before you know it, you're sort of in this relationship where you've got everything already. You've got the house, you're married, you've got kids. And then that relationship then goes from there, and you're finding out probably about each other along the way. And you, to a certain extent, I think you mold each other, not necessarily in a bad way, but you mold to each other and you mold each other. So you become a better person for the other person, and you're quite happy to do it. Now, jump forward after that. If that doesn't work out, the problem with meeting people, I think, for me, when you get older, or not the problem, but the issues are that you've already got all these expectations. You've already got an idea of what you do like. You've got an idea of what you don't like. So that straight away becomes very, very difficult, because you're meeting other people that are coming out of very similar or the same situations. Also added to this, when you're into your 30s or sometimes even your late 20s and you're coming out of relationships, you've probably already established a life for yourself as well. So you've already got maybe a house, more than likely kids, you've already got your circle of friends, and then you have this time when you sort of enjoy single life, I guess. You enjoy having freedom back and the ability to be selfish again and just think about yourself. And so you're doing all these things, and then you start creating a life, and then you then start thinking about maybe having a relationship again. That's when you start looking around. So straight away, what the things that are different, that pool's now got a lot less, because there's a lot of people that are in relationships already, or they've sort of had marriages and they're happy in marriages and they're staying in marriages. So you're in a pool of people at that time. Now that pool does change, because obviously, as COVID was an example of this. When people got out of COVID, there were so many divorces because people realised that their lives had changed so much in terms of each other, that when they was in the same house together, they kind of, after sort of 2 or 3 months, wanted to bloody kill each other. So, sometimes the pools grow depending on what's going on, and sometimes they shrink because people will come out and meet people. And I think some people will be very, very picky, and other people just want to be in a relationship. So it's like we spoke about before, it's pieces of a puzzle. People will, happily go with something that maybe not be a great fit for them, because they're that kind of person that can blend into other surroundings and be happy with that. So you've already got all these external things already in place going on. And then you've got to fit someone else into that as well. So then that causes a lot of questions. So really simple things, locations. If you're going on dating sites, I remember when I was on dating sites, the people that I were meeting were, miles away. And at first you think, yeah, this is doable, this is okay. But long term, you know that you're not going to be able to maybe sustain that. So one of you is then going to have to move. So that's a big life change for one of you. And even if it's only an hour and a half away, someone's then got to go, right, I'm going to pick up my life here to come to you with there's no guarantee that that's going to work out. And if that doesn't work out, then where am I? I've moved to somewhere else. So then I've got to go back to that again. And then there's, the question of houses. If you've already got your own house and you're established and you're quite independent, to a degree, you'll be giving up or gambling that independence on this relationship. Now, listen, in a perfect world, we all want to do that. We all believe in love, and love's biggest advocate, I think, is a great thing. But these are all things that you consider outside of that, and that add, wouldn't say pressure, but they add a complication to it as well. Now you're leaving your house, you're going to live somewhere else, and it doesn't work out, and you're moving back again. And so you're thinking, I kind of want to keep my house. And what if both of you don't want to move? Because that's relying on one of you going, yeah, fine, I'm happy to move where I'm living. And it's good for the other person because they're like, well, okay, my life's not going to change. If this doesn't work out, then they leave my house. And then, the other person might want a little bit more security. So you'd be talking about, well, maybe we should get married again. And then, a lot of people I've met that have come out of marriages, I've never been married, but a lot of people that I've met that have come out of marriages have kind of said, I'm not doing that again. I'm not getting married again. Yes, can I have a relationship, but I'm not getting married again. So then that becomes an issue as well. Obviously, then it's about kids. When kids are involved as well, you've got to be prepared, and we'll get onto this in a moment, but you've got to be prepared. Are your kids going to get along? Are your kids the same ages? Do you want to get involved with someone with kids? Personally, my thoughts on that is that if you meet someone you like, you're kind of going to try and make things work, but these are just added things to it. Because if they've got young kids, I dated a lot of women that all said, I'm not dating anyone with young kids. I've been there, I've done that, I'm not doing it again. For others, it wasn't a problem at all. But then you're then taking on young kids as well. And that in itself is, if you're not used to it, that can be quite a challenge sometimes as well, because you might be going in to a relationship, and I've been the kid with people coming in to dating my mum when she was single, and how I felt about other guys. So you have to tread very carefully, because those memories for me are still very sort of fresh in my head of people. Well, they're not going to be my new dad, and all of this. And then some guys do come in and try and impose themselves on you because they want to be the man of the house. So that's another whole conversation of how you treat that one, because that's very, very difficult ground. And I'm speaking from someone that went through that as well. So you've got all of that. And then it just then becomes, your lifestyle that suits other people, especially if you've been single for a while. Because if you've been single for a while, you will have established a network of routines, people, places you go, things that you do that become your support system, really. So for me, it's something like football and going to the gym and, doing stuff with Zach. And it's all these things and friends that you've already got. Now, when someone else comes in, you've got to give time to that relationship. And then you've then got to almost stop some of the stuff that you're doing to give time to this relationship, which you should be doing. But that's quite difficult as well, because, you're always aware, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm giving up all these things that I may not get back again in order to do that. And this is the whole time that I'm talking here. This is my view. It's from both sides as well. So you've got two people going through these thought processes. So they may be coming from different directions, but in essence, they're all things that are being considered. So then you've then got to give up all this support network, or compromise this support network to give time to the relationship, which you want to do because you want to spend time with someone else. But then you get these feelings of I do like doing that. So then that all becomes a juggling act of how you do that. And if you throw in your life going on as well, your work, or if you've got projects that you've got going on that you used to do outside of work and that that are important to finish, you're then doing that as well. All these things are sort of thrown into a mixer, and you've got to try and make the most of it. But these are all things that you didn't have when you were younger. It wasn't that complicated, or it didn't seem that complicated. Or is it a case of we just massively overthink it as we get older? And I found that what I've done now is that I try to think a lot less about it, and that seems to be working for me quite well. So you still get issues that come up, but it's then about how you deal with them. Another difficult thing is that from your experiences when you're younger, all those micro relationships you've had where you'll sort of piece together aspects of people or personality traits that you don't like. Maybe it's something like drinking too much, or maybe it's something like going out too much, or maybe it's something that the person's not tactile, or they're not loving, or they're too smothering. So all these little things that we sort of harbour in our heads from past relationships, I found that if I tend to see aspects of these in new relationships, then it sort of becomes I'm not sure about that. And then that in your own head can manifest into something a lot bigger than it is. Other times, you could be spot on and you think, oh no, I'll go along with it. And then 2 months later, you kind of think, I knew that was going to be the case. I knew that was going to be a breaking point at some stage. And like I said, this is happening both ways all the time. So other people are thinking about you. So it's finding someone that you fit and they fit you, that piece of the puzzle again. And that's what makes it a lot harder when you're older, because you're willing to bend, I think, a lot less because you know yourself a lot better. I think when you're younger, you're still finding out about yourself. I think when you get older and you've been through the mill a little bit, as it were, in terms of breakups, heartbreaks, relationships, you're used to, and you've got to know yourself a lot better, and you're used to being single. And I've said this a few times. I think to be single, you've got to be a very strong, independent person that is happy in your own head. And that's a tough place to be, in your own head, on your own. Those nights when it's a Saturday night, take a bank holiday, it's a bank holiday Sunday, that everyone's out, but you're sitting in on your own because maybe your kids have gone off with their dad or their mum, and you didn't make any arrangements because it was a last minute thing. And then at those times, if you can sit and just think, this is cool, I'm going to cook some nice food, I'm going to watch a film, I'm going to have a lovely evening, then you're in a good place. And I think that puts you in a better place to meet people. But there's a lot of people that can't do that. They'll sit and think, oh, I've got to meet someone. And they'll be signing up for Hinge again, or looking for old WhatsApps and profile pictures of people they used to date just to see what they're up to. And then you start replaying all these relationships in your mind, thinking, oh, why did that go wrong? And why didn't I do that? And why didn't I do that? And yeah, it can be a tough place to be. So you do need to be quite a strong, independent person to be single. And then you're taking that into relationships when you meet people as well. Okay, so let's jump forward. So you've managed to meet someone. They fit you, you fit them. Then you get to the situations. Now, everyone has a situation, whatever it may be. It could be an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend. It could be they've come out of a relationship and they've been scarred by this relationship. So they've got hang-ups about that, and they've got issues that they're still dealing with themselves. So, and we've all got these things to a certain degree. So once you meet someone, it's then about dealing with the situation. And like I said, they're all different things. So for instance, if they've got kids, you're going to have to accept, or maybe you're not going to have to accept, that you're going to be second choice, third choice, fourth choice. Maybe, maybe they got cats and dogs. Maybe you'll be fifth and sixth down the line. You're going to have to understand that as well. Now, I had lots of relationships where, and I wouldn't have done anything different, where to me, my biggest priority was Zach. Zach was always going to come first, still does, even though, he's 22 now, still does. And that was difficult, which I completely understand for other people that I was dating. to accept because they wanted their time as well. And I just wasn't willing to bend on it. So that, the other person, if they don't accept that, a lot of the time for me, it was, but, this is how it is. Now, I've met people who think exactly the same as me, and I've met people that think completely different to me. So it's about finding someone that understands that as well. And if you've got kids and you meet someone that hasn't got kids, that's difficult for them to do based on they haven't got kids. So they maybe wouldn't have experienced that love that we spoke about before that you have for your kids, that is just sort of unmovable, unbreakable. It's not bending at all. So you've got to accept that you're going to be fourth or fifth choice. And then the other person's got to do this with you likewise. So that can be a situation. The situation of houses, if you're both happy in your own places, are you both happy going, okay, we've got two houses, great, you'll stay here, I'll stay there. I keep reading about all these Hollywood relationships now that, the best relationships seem to be where, they live in separate rooms or they live in separate houses and then they've got a house together. So there is going to be situations that you're going to need to be dealing with. Now, in these situations, it's really important, I think, that you both understand that you can be frustrated at the situation. But let's say kids is always an easy example to use because it's very common as well. You are going to have nights out that are going to be cancelled last minute because something is going on with the kids. And that could be a major thing and it could be a minor thing. But to the parent, it's important. It's important that they still show their kids that they're turning up, that they're still showing up for them, and that just because the relationship with their mother or their father hasn't worked, that they're going to be there for them and they're not going to be somewhere else and not showing up for you, because that has a big effect on kids. From personal experience, that has a really big effect going forward. So you've got to make sure that you're still showing up for them. Now, you might be just in the throes of getting ready, coming down the stairs, phone goes, okay, I'll be home in 5 minutes. Now, the other person has got to be understanding of this or not understanding of this. And these are the points where I think you're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to be annoyed by it. The difference for me is you can be annoyed at the situation. You can be frustrated at the situation, but don't be annoyed or frustrated at the person because they're just doing what they think is best. And this is going to work both ways. So you've got to be understanding the situation, but it's fine, I think, to be frustrated. And you're allowed to say that. I think if you're in a sort of a good relationship and a safe relationship where you're comfortable, you can go, this is really, cheese me off tonight. Yeah, I am annoyed. Yeah, but as long as they understand you're not annoyed at them, because that's the big thing. They can be like, yeah, I get it, you're annoyed, but you understand I've got to go, right? And then becomes a different conversation where you're not annoyed at each other. You're just, this situation is going to be annoying. This is not going to be a one-off thing. This is going to happen 5 or 6 times, and it's going to be over really simple, mundane things that are important to your kids. And it's going to be over really big things where, you've got no choice. You've got to be there. But it's about getting through these situations. And they could be a number of things. It could be friends, parents, whatever it may be. And I think as long as you're calm in these situations and you think about the situation in terms of being annoyed at it, because what I found that I did a lot of times when I would get frustrated enough to in my own head just think, this is just too much. And then because I didn't separate the two things, I combined them together. I was thinking that the situation was the person. So what I would do is I'd go, look, I can't do it tonight because I've got to go home, because they would get frustrated, understandably so. And then I would think they're frustrated at me. And then in my head, I would build it up like thinking, well, I understand they're frustrated, but then I'd get annoyed because I don't want to be made to feel guilty about going to see, my son or whatever it may be, your kids. You don't want to be made to feel guilty about that. You don't want to feel like someone else is making you feel guilty because you're going to be doing that a lot. So then you get to the point of where you just go, oh, do you know what, this is too much, and then you start sending messages, and then that's the worst thing about how you communicate this as well, because if you're doing this over text messages, translation gets lost very, very easily. Even voice notes, I've had a situation where I've sat with someone and we've both listened to a voice note that I've sent, and that we got something completely different out of it. So I think it's not just a voice, it's how you express yourself with hands. I'm always throwing my hands around, with hands and with tone of voice. And because when you're talking into a phone, it tends to be a little bit monologue, I guess. You don't always get the emotion out because you don't want to listen to a voice note of you screaming your head off at them, because they're going to press stop straight away, I'd imagine. So you lose a lot. So you need to do it either over the phone or, if you can, in person, and then have those conversations there, which is difficult because for me, I hate waiting. I can't stand waiting. If someone says to me, I need to speak to you about something, speak to me now. Don't speak to me about in 5 days or 2 days or an hour. It happens to me a lot of work where people say, oh, I'm going to need to speak to you later. No, speak to me now, because between this point and that point, I'm going to build this up in my head into something major. And then in that time, I'm going to be biting everyone else's heads off because I know that something may be coming my way that I want to deal with. So I like to hit things head on straight away as soon as they come up in my head, which is not always a great thing because that can be the wrong time for another person as well. But I think how you communicate this is really important. So then it's conversations, and then you become better, I think, I'm hoping, at managing situations and, realizing that, right, this is our situation. Key thing here, situation. It's a situation doesn't mean it won't change, because situations change because they become easier. People become older. My situation now with Zach as he's older to when Zach was young is completely different. It's still my situation, but it's changed. It's evolved because he's become older. He's become more independent. He's become able to get himself to places. So I don't have to pick him up, take him back, get in there and make sure he's okay. He's better at dealing with things on his own. It's probably more now I'm asking him more questions than I used to because I want to be involved more than when I was always involved because I had to be. So, that's the other thing as well. Situations change. They become easier because you become used to them. And when you first experience these things, if you are, say you've just met someone and they've got kids and you're just experiencing this for the first time, just be aware that, situations get easier because you become better at dealing with them. At first it will seem like it will hit your head on and it's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Take a breath, give yourself a bit of time. The bottom line for me always is, how much do you want to be with this other person, this other guy, this other woman? And if it's enough that you can adapt to the situation, get used to the situation, and ultimately get through the situation together, you'll be in a better place for it. I hope that, maybe some sense in there somewhere, probably a lot of nonsense in there along the way, but it's just stuff that I've experienced from myself, my relationships that I've had, from coming out of relationships, going into relationships, having kids, dating with people with kids, dating people without kids. And I think sometimes us sharing our experiences can help each other. So there we go, guys. Thank you again for joining 50 Shades of Grey. Make sure you subscribe and hopefully watch. Give me a thumbs up. You can follow us on Instagram, occasionally on TikTok. Don't get TikTok. I put things out on TikTok. Never know where they're going to go. Can't work it out, but, follow us on TikTok as well. Love to hear your feedback and stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Enjoy your situations.